Hey yo, I'm Miss Linnea Lark. Welcome back to part 2 of making a vibe collage. In the last video I showed you some amazing collage artists and how you can utilize a design structure in your work to make your compositions more organized and visually pleasing. We also brainstormed our vibes idea, and then I showed you how to hunt down images, places, people, backgrounds, and colors to help you create your vibe collage. I also showed you a bunch of cool collaging techniques that you might enjoy trying. Click the card on the top right of the screen if you'd like to watch that video now. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to organize your imagery, how to cut your images out, and then how to arrange them to make a well-balanced and structured composition that is easy to look at and even fun to look at. All right, let's get into it. All right, now that I've collected a whole bunch of stuff, I organize my papers that I've collected. I make a pile of papers with an image that I'm going to cut out, and then I make a second pile that just has all of the large colors that I collected. I even separate those color piles into color-coded order. I make sure all the blues are together, all the yellows are together, etc., etc. And then I go about cutting out all of those small shapes that I think I might be able to use. I want to cut them out pretty tight, but I only perfectly cut out the images that I am pretty certain I want to use. I don't want to waste my time cutting things out really tightly if I'm not ending up using them. The ones that I'm not sure of, I just loosely cut them out to see if they might work for me. I also have a small envelope for all the small pieces so that they don't get ripped or misplaced inside of my larger envelope. Before I start arranging, I like to organize all my imagery. I like to make one pile of all my potential focal points. These would be like subject matters, things like people and animals. It could be an object as well. Then I also like to make a pile of backgrounds. The backgrounds are things like skies, maybe hills or mountains, almost like a landscape or maybe a city, things that could look like it's going further from the eye. And then I make a pile of all of my middle ground options. These could be random shapes that I've cut out. It could be blocks of color that I might slip between two images so that they're easier to see on top of each other. Or it might be more imagery that I found. I know I need a background, middle ground, and foreground, so I start playing with the different layers. I also need a clear focal point. Honestly, I didn't even expect to use the paper cutting technique like this star. I just did it to show you guys what you could do, but I ended up really loving the sun shape that I cut out of the night sky with an orange behind it. Very eye-catchy. From here, there is a lot of back and forth. I try different shapes, different objects, and colors. I am very conscious that I need one clear focal point and a clear structure. I tried some symmetry, but landed on rule of thirds. I made sure to use harmonious colors as well. That way it feels good. The black and white building was a really lucky find because neutrals are easy to fit inside of any color palette. I play with the arrangement again and again until it works for the rule of thirds, it feels balanced, and includes my vibe joy. When you get your arrangement just how you want it, take a picture of it. You might not have time to glue it down immediately, and believe me, you're never going to remember exactly where you had it 2 days prior. My in-person students, you'll need to get my permission before you glue down. Bring me the picture of your arrangement and we'll discuss the focal point, your design structure, your balance, and I will double check that you have 6 layers including your words. I would say that the 2 most common issues that I send kids back to the drawing board for is number 1, not having a clear structure. It doesn't look like rule of thirds or pyramid. It doesn't look like any of the structures that we've talked about. And then the second is that their composition as a whole is just way too overwhelming and cluttered. Make sure your image is simple, balanced, and has high contrast so that it's easy to see. Now here is the deal. If you finish and your composition still feels chaotic, busy, unbalanced, confusing, or hard to look at, chances are that either your composition and or your craftsmanship needs some major attention. So let's talk about it. I think the biggest problem that I see with students' work, and I make them go back and fix it, is because their design is chaotic and overwhelming. It looks a little bit haphazard. It doesn't look intentional or like it has an organized design to it. In this image, you can see lots of issues going on. Number 1, there's so many different colors that it's really super overwhelming. It's busy on busy on busy. So I definitely need to simplify the color scheme. Another issue here is that I feel like I have 3 focal points. There's 2 people, which are very important. People like people and they feel very important to us. But also the goose itself is really large. But he's also not cut out very well. He's got letters and text on his bottom, and he's covered up by really bad joy letters that aren't cut out very well or sized or shaped very well together. The whole thing is just reading chaos. And I loved and chose every single little piece, but sometimes how you arrange it and put it together, all the things that you love, in the end you might love them, but they just don't work. So what we got to do is we got to simplify it. But first, we need to have a little talk about contrast. Contrast is the state of being strikingly different from something else. When collaging, you must be aware that you are likely to find a bazillion amazing images that you're probably going to love. But together, they may look like a raccoon had a party in a dumpster after a taco truck explosion. Just because you like all of your images doesn't mean that they look good together. We need to make sure that our colors vibe, that we have a design structure, and that we are creating a scene that is easy to see. We desperately need contrast. So let's play a game called Choose the Best Background. Some 70s color schemed fish eggs. What is that? Not sure that's a promising color scheme. Not to mention how busy that pattern is. The dots draw so much attention that I'm having trouble even seeing the car. I really enjoy both of these images, and I like the way that the words are used as a texture, and they're slanted at such an angle that you really can't read it. So it's vibing as more as an image instead of text. But I feel like the color on the bottom is just too light. There's something about the ground that I want it to be heavier, maybe darker. And so the bottom for me on this one feels a little bit too washed away. I'm not really vibing this one. I really like the background sky color with the car. The blue and yellow really look nice together, but it also looks like there's some buildings back there, but most of it's being covered up by the car, so this just isn't a great composition. I can't really see what's there. Not to mention that the bottom is a hot mess. The colors are so close to the car, but also so dark that I'm losing them in the bumper. It just does not vibe. In this fourth example, I just don't think any of the 3 images relate to each other well. I like the idea of the car with the palm trees. I'm not quite sure what the microbes are doing on the bottom. I do think those are pleasing colors, but together it's all just reading a little bit too busy, and my mind can't make a connection, which makes me want to reject this image. All right, number 5, it works. There's nothing wrong with it. The sky seems sky and the bottom seems asphalty. I mean, they work, they vibe, the colors don't clash. However, I'm a little bit bored. Are you guys bored too? It's a little bit too safe. There's nothing really visually interesting that's going to hold my attention here. And the whole point of collage is that you can do interesting and weird things. So for me, I don't think this one's worth our time. Our last option with the rainbow is really nice. We've got the same color palette as option number 5, but there's something just a little bit more interesting with that rainbow in the background. It also frames our car in a really lovely way that almost makes it feel magical. I really like this option. I even like that the horizon line, the contrast between the middle ground and the background, is at a rule of thirds, and I feel like that's really nicely balanced. I feel like of the 6 options, the one with the best color scheme, the one that isn't busy, that leads my eye to the car the most, is the 6th option with the rainbow. What do you guys think? Okay, let's get back to our vibe cards. It's time to fix this chaotic composition. Let's go ahead and get our card out of the mix. And I'm going to pick my most important image for this piece. And for me, that is the goose. I just really like that goose, you guys. I go about cutting him out so that he feels a lot more neat and clean. And I'm definitely going to need to find a way to either cut off his top or cover his bottom so that all that text on the bottom isn't confusing and interrupt the flow of my piece. Once you've chosen what your focal point's going to be, now everything else that was in your chaotic design is less important. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and place my goose somewhere that could work for my design structure. If I put him in the middle, it could work for symmetry or pyramid. So let's go ahead and try that out. Then it's a good idea to find an image to go behind or in front of your image. I kind of move them around and see how they can fit together. I didn't really like the goose in front. They felt like they were competing, and the words were still visible. So then I went ahead and put the temple in front of the goose and arranged it in such a way that they kind of line up together. And I really kind of liked that. But it also made the goose feel less important. He doesn't feel like the focal point anymore. So I might be in search of another focal point at some point. I try some of my other imagery, but it was just too chaotic. I go and look for more, but this green just doesn't look like it's framing my piece very well. It becomes difficult to see my goose. There's not enough contrast. I find another background image and ooh, I like this sky. And I kind of like the way the goose is sticking out from it. I think I might have a winner here, you guys. But it still just doesn't feel like anything super important. I feel like I'm looking for a focal point. I thought about one of the people from my original composition, but I just think that their size and scale is just too small to work with this image. In the end, I think the little people are just not going to work. So since those guys aren't going to work, I go back to all my saved images and I was able to find this happy looking guy. And I kind of like the way that he's looking down. I go ahead and add him to the scene, but for some reason it just still doesn't look great. I like all the images separately. I kind of like them together, but when I see them all together assembled like this, it's kind of hard to see each image. So I've got to find a way to make it work. I decide that the bottom of the temple is the area that's feeling really confusing for me. There's a lot of trees and there's sidewalk and there's doors down there that kind of are really small and my eye jumps around on the cars. And so I try to cover those up with this texture, but the texture was super busy and it didn't quite vibe. So then I go on and try another texture, and I like this one a lot better. These green wildflowers and rolling hills are a nice touch, but where they intersect by the green doors on the temple, it was just too chaotic, I think. There was just not enough contrast in that area. And so what I do is I go and grab a stencil and cut out something that is flat and high contrast. I find this really nice kind of baby blue and cut out a circle from it. And I really liked that. Also, I liked the way that the guy is kind of looking in that direction. It's starting to feel like a story to me. I liked it so much that I decided to put another circle behind the sky, and that way it can frame the goose's face. And I think I've got my composition about where I want it. I'm pretty excited about it. So let's go ahead and get the letters of my vibe, joy, over here. What do you guys think? I think it's pretty obvious that those letters are correct. It's a J, an O, and a Y. But the O is so big and the Y is so green and that J is so red. It's starting to look like Christmas up in here and it just doesn't add to the vibe of my card. So I got to go back to the drawing board and find some different letters with maybe matching colors and sizes. And look at this. I found a nice big font with a J, an O, and a Y. Let's go. All right, it's time to assess how I've done. Now, just realize that at this point, it's just the arrangement. I haven't actually glued anything down. Notice that some of the areas aren't quite lined up very well because all the little pieces are floating around, especially that Y that almost looks crooked. But let's take a second to go back and look at the initial chaotic design and compare it to the new structured and intentional design. I hope you guys can tell how cutting things out super precisely, making sure that there's contrast between your layers, gluing things down really specifically and well, can really help you make a more intentional and designed collage. Okay, how am I doing? Is it looking less chaotic? Can you tell what my structure is? Can you easily tell what my focal point is? Is my vibe readable? Is there good contrast and balance? I think there is. I think we're good to go on this one. You guys, I had so much fun making these vibe collages. I literally could not stop. I made 6 and I still have a few more compositions to glue down still. I had a blast. I hope you guys do too. All right, you guys, that's all for this video today. I've shown you how to arrange your work. Next time we're gonna learn how to glue it down for keeps. Don't mess it up. And also don't forget, if you'd like to buy the brainstorming worksheet, or if you'd like to buy any of the tools that we use in our classroom for yourself, you can find both links to my Teachers Pay Teachers site and to my Amazon affiliate site, where I can get some money back. So hook me up. Thank you so much for watching, and happy day.